Okay, as you can see, I'm not tech, that's AJ, but I'm passionate about working with children, and 5 to 11s is the age group I particularly love to be with. We're going to explore what it looks like to work with children who are developing a living faith, who have a living faith in a children's group, in sessions with children, and how we listen, how we learn, and how we love together. We'll consider what we actually do within the groups, as well as in the times in between the sessions. We'll think about both. In the URC, Sam Richards often says to us, we should only do separately, I think it's Sam that said this, what we should only do separately what in all good conscience we can't do together. And so my question is, what is it that's unique to working in groups with children that we can't find that opportunity anywhere else? So that's what I want to explore. So we're going to think about how we nurture, enable children to develop their own faith by listening, learning and loving, all within this framework of the 3 L's we've had in our 3 sessions. We need to acknowledge that 5 to 11s is a large age range with significant difference between a 5-year-old and an 11-year-old. And so you might have broken this down into 5 and 6s, 7s to 9s, and perhaps 10 to 11s. But there are many hidden riches to be found in a group that has a wide age span as well. So we might think through those things this evening. I think we need to start with some definitions, and spirituality is the term that I would use more than faith development often, spirituality being the whole child. And there's many theories of child spirituality out there. This is the one that I sit with, or that sits comfortably with me. If you're a fan of Catherine Coetzee or Keith White or even Rebecca Nye, you will recognise this as being the 4 journeys of spirituality. Who am I? That's the first journey a child embarks on. It's about identity. Who do they say they are? Who do we say they are? Who does God say that they are? The second journey, who are you? If I know who I am, who are you in comparison to me? Are we the same? Are we different? Do we have the same values? Who are all these other people around me? And how are they in relation to me? The third journey, where is this? Where am I? Where do I find myself? My context, my home, my family, my church, my environment, my school, my world. And the fourth journey, what else is there? The so what question. Thinking about the other, thinking about God. It's sometimes called the in, the out, the down and the up journeys. I wondered how the pandemic has impacted on these 4 journeys for our children. This is an individual journey of spirituality, but it's done amongst others, and we'll be looking at what it looks like in a group setting. I offer you just these. I'm sure you're going to get a copy of these slides to have time to read them. But we also need to take into consideration how children develop and what they like to do. These are all generalisations, so we need to be careful with these lists. When do they like working on their own, for example? 5 to 7s, and then they move on to thinking about working in smaller groups, but preferably the same gender often. And then 10 to 11s like working in large groups and getting competitive and abstract in their thinking. Perhaps we need to think about the transitions that are happening within our group with all of this, if we've got a wide age range. And think about the transition, particularly with 5 to 11s, between who is the main influence on these children and on their development and on their thinking, perhaps, and on their spirituality. So 0 to 6, generalisation, it's the parents. 7 to 11, there's a shift from parents being the main influence to really being teacher says. You know, it's gone from daddy says this to, but Miss Blake says, we've all been there as a parent, where we're suddenly wrong on everything. So I've defined living faith as a personal relationship with God. And if we have our aim in our groups to nurture and help children develop this living faith, this personal relationship with God, If that's our aim, then surely it helps us in our decision making on how we work with children. So what is it that we can offer in a group setting? Let's think of the three very briefly, and then later, the bit I'm desperate to get to is the practical ideas. So, keep those spiritual journeys in the back of your head. None of that spiritual journey can be done in one place, and we can't do everything in a group setting. So continue to think about the whole journey, the whole spiritual journey for a child, and think about what is happening where in their lives to determine where our part is in our groups, and perhaps join the dots up between all of those aspects as well. We've only got the children for about 40 hours a week if we're lucky, so we need to make the most of it and try not to do everything in that one place. Parents offer something we can't. RE in schools offer something, as Alice reminded us, that we might not. Friendships that they have will definitely be offering them something different to what we've offered. And perhaps intergenerational worship opportunities, again, offer something very different. So what is it? I'm going to keep asking. I will come up with an answer. What is it that is unique to being in a group setting? What can we offer? We need to listen to children, we need to listen with children, and we need to play the advocate role to enable others to hear their voices too. And we'll look at how we can do all of this. When we listen to children, it's about listening to them in their context as well, listening to the whole needs of their group, of the group we have. Let's get to know our children, especially if you're fortunate enough to have a small group. The opportunity is there to really get to know all the individuals within your group, and to really truly listen to where are they, who are they, what are their passions. We know just by listening to that video that Alice is passionate about animals, any animals. Get Alex started on that. And Alex very passionate about the whole environment. We gained that just from a 4-minute clip. So let's listen, truly listen to our children. Then let's listen with them to God and to each other. What are the opportunities do we provide for them to be able to learn how to do that with each other together? And I've always been interested in the prophetic voice of children. It seems to me that children just get it right. 9 times out of 10 can break through all the dross of us adults, and we hear the voice of God in their thinking. So what are the opportunities to hear those prophetic voices of our children, but also to then pass that on and make sure that the wider church, the wider communities and their families also hear those voices? I wonder what the children, if we were to ask them and listen, would say the aim of our group is. I wonder why they come. Perhaps it's just because they're brought. So I asked the question, what is it that's unique to a group environment regarding developing living faith? And the answer could be found here in learning. Perhaps the answer is that we provide that unique space, that unique opportunity to be age appropriate, age relevant, and to provide the children with a place away from all those other influences we've been talking about that are part of their natural development, to give them a space where they can really experiment, where they can really begin to play with theology, to challenge themselves, to challenge others, and to explore what they believe for themselves, and to explore what their relationship with God looks like outside, just briefly for that 1.5 hours every Sunday morning, outside of their family context or outside of the wider church context. There's a real luxury in being aside together and really pulling things apart and exploring it, and perhaps learning new ways of doing things. So that's what I think is unique to groups, a place where they can come aside, pull apart, explore, challenge, ask questions in a safe space in a way of forming their own faith. Remembering that shift in influence, that they are already at a stage where they're starting to doubt or challenge what they're hearing at home or at school, potentially. And so we need to do this in a very sensitive way that honours the context of where the child has come from. How much of our curriculum, our learning, is about part 4, that 4th journey, exploring who God is? How much of it is about that, and how little of it sometimes is about the other 3 parts of spirituality? Who am I? Who are you? And where do we find ourselves? So it's learning from our children as well as learning with them. What is it that we want to explore? What is it that we want to learn? And how? We want our groups to be not just sessions where we have a Bible story and then a craft, for example, although I love craft. We want it to be a place where the Holy Spirit can meet children where they're at and work. We want to offer genuine worship within our groups because our children are meeting as groups of children to worship together. And there's something there that they're not necessarily going to get in any of the other places. So are we including all the elements? Prayer, response, worship, Bible exploration, perhaps testimonies. Are there opportunities to reflect, to respond? Are we being creative in our exploration together? Offering them that chance to unpick, whilst, as I said, can't say it enough, offering, honouring the context that the children have come from. Loving is simple in my head. I oversimplify things. Jesus modelled this. Jesus modelled discipleship through a loving relationship. Journeying with each other is loving each other, valuing each other's journeys. I often wonder where rotas fit in this for me. That's a question I'm going to leave you with, I guess. If it's about consistent, genuine relationships, where do rotas fit in that? As a leader, I struggle if I'm not there regularly learning with and exploring with the children. Showing love to children is good, is easy. That's why we're there. We're passionate about children. But sometimes I come away from sessions, I don't know about you, and I wonder whether I showed the same love to my team colleagues because we're all stressed and we're all busy. Jesus said, by this, they will know that you're my disciples. So I wonder what the children see in how we love each other as leaders. We were reminded in week 1 that the church has a responsibility to address all the needs of children, not just the Bible bit faith development. So what does love for our children in the group look like during the session? And what does it look like when the session ends? And what does our love for each other look like within the session? So the question I leave you with is, what are the opportunities that might be unique to us working in a group session when it comes to listening, learning together and loving? Brilliant. Okay, so we've looked at some of the theory and some of the principles. And I say some, 10 minutes, quick trip through some of the theory. So now we're going to think about what that might actually look like in practice. So get some ideas perhaps. And there's a wealth of experience in this room tonight. So I'm hoping that you're going to get busy on the chat as well and throw all those ideas out. Because I'm looking forward to hearing them. And like I say, each time with each of these 3, we're going to be thinking about what we do in sessions as well as what we do outside of the session, in between and in the planning perhaps. So a reminder of what we highlighted as some of the principles, this whole listening to each other, listening to children, listening to God and listening together in our group and outside of it. So before the session, this is very much about, I believe, listening, hearing where the children would like to go exploring. It's very Montessori, isn't it? Where are you going to take me today, child? But not seeing it as we're the teacher, we plan the curriculum, or we use a resource that does it for us, but also thinking about asking the children in the planning stage, what is it this term that you want to explore? What are your big questions, as Pam alluded to earlier? They're used to this way of working in schools, and so it is going to be familiar. And how refreshing to be asked in church. Oh, can you imagine if they did an adult church? What would you all like to be exploring this term? I'd love to be asked that by the minister. So let's ask them. And we can do that within the session as we come to the end of a term, or we can do it outside of the session as well. And dare I say, I've dabbled in having children in our planning meetings as well. So, I'm the first to say, if you want to do intergenerational ministry well, then have an intergenerational ministry planning team, and it will follow suit. And the same goes for our children's work. So if you, it's about recognising people's skills. So if you're noticing that some of your children, not just the older age range, but some of your children are full of ideas, showing almost signs of being natural leaders, is there opportunities to get them involved in our planning stages? Easily done on Zoom is what we've learned in the last 18 months, and more accessible. And be listening to what is going on in the world, what is going on in schools, what is going on in our children's lives throughout the week, so that we actually can take that in and incorporate it in our work, so that it's not jarring with their reality, what we're looking at on a Sunday or a Wednesday or whenever it is. What methods do we have, I wonder, to listen outside of the sessions? How available are we, I guess? During the session, I believe it's about learning how to listen together. So I've mixed this up with the learning now, but learning how to listen together. What are the tools needed? Some of us are really good at listening. Some of us, like me, aren't so great at listening because we like to fill space with noise and sound and our own opinions. So these are things we can practice together. So providing opportunities, as Stephen was saying, to be still, to listen to each other, to take turns, to practice these skills, these spirituality skills together. Time within our sessions to share our own stories, I think, is invaluable. I have to remind myself in planning sessions to include this. It's fundamental to the 4 journeys in spirituality. Absolutely fundamental to be able to verbalise, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm at with you, this is where I'm at with the world, this is where I'm at with God, and this is what happened this week. Everybody sharing stories in small groups perhaps. Let's read the Bible together, and then let's listen to each other. What is that story saying to you today? Is anybody, does it make you think of any other Bible stories, I wonder, that are popping to mind? Let's see the Bible as a whole, not just as the story we're looking at today. And then providing these spaces to pray and reflect and be still and listen to God. Oh, it's a hard one for me, this one. But they have to be genuine, don't they? They have to have integrity as well as being creative. Not having our session planned so rigid and planned to the fine minute, that where's the room for the Holy Spirit to work? Where's the opportunities for your session to get ambushed by the children with their own thoughts, ideas and exploration? I love it when that happens, when I planned a session and I'm thinking, I can see where God's taking us here, and then I'm completely wrong, and the children end up saying, that's about this. I haven't seen that. Let's go explore that then together, rather than saying, no, you need to come back to what I've planned. So it's really that active listening of it being a fluid, interconnecting way of being with each other in our session, I guess. And of course, I have to, because my job, I have to say that part of listening is about safeguarding, isn't it, within our sessions? That listening to the child in their context, and is that child okay? Is part of it for me. And afterwards, I know that Pam's going to go there, so I won't go there, Pam, but definitely advocate how are we enabling our families to continue listening to each other and continue exploring together throughout the week. Take-home sheets are brilliant. Do we advocate between families and their children? Do we say to mum at the the door on collection. Oh, Levi said this today. I know, it was brilliant. You might want to ask him about that over lunch. I'd love to hear more of that story. And advocating the voice of children is huge for me. It's one of my soapboxes. But it's about raising the awareness within the wider church and community that they are there, this hidden ministry that's going on next door, and you might hear it every now and then if we're running around, but don't leave it hidden. Don't let it become hidden. Those voices of the children need sharing outside of our group. How can we do that? How can we let others join us on that journey of listening to our children? Alex and Alice said they like to listen when it's stuff that interests them. I loved that. And if there's images to go along. So back to the planning stages, what does interest them, the ways they learn, the things they want to learn about. Hearing everybody was big for Alice. She talked about all those voices. She's okay with not being heard if someone said what she was going to say, but it was really important that she felt that everybody had been listened to. And I think that's about timing as well, leaving that space, that time to genuinely get in and discuss stuff together. And I don't quite know what to say about it, but I just loved Alex's phrase of speaking out. He never said when people speak, he always said when people speak out about. What an interesting phrase that I think needs unpacking. But not today. Okay, so we move on to learning. So what do we want to learn? Let's get the children's views on all of this. Why do we want to learn it? So if you said to the children, next term we were thinking about looking at Elisha and Elijah, I wonder what you're thinking about that. I wonder what your questions would be. I wonder what you would like to explore. I wonder what you already know about them. I wonder what you wonder about with Elisha and Elijah. That would feed into our planning. So we know what we're learning, why we're learning. We can think about how we're going to learn and when. Not just in the session, but what can we continue to explore outside of the session. Everyone being a teacher. Let's move on to the how. Everyone being a teacher, not just the person at the front. We talked about learning skills, not just stories. I believe that the session is genuinely worship. I know I keep saying that, but I think if we plan it as such, half of this is done for us. Our role is to help children to take God's word, open it, explore it, and there's skills to that we need to learn together. So it's not just the actual learning going on from the Bible story, but it's learning about how do I approach the Bible? How does the Bible work? How can I read the Bible? I don't just have to read it in print. I can listen to it. I can hear it in many different ways. If I've got many different Bibles, I can see it as a dramatic thing. I can hear it in song. Are we providing as many different opportunities and methods for the children to engage with, so that they then learn for themselves what suits them, what works best for them? So you might do some Lectio Divino work where you read the same passage 3 times, and each time you say, I wonder what stood out for you. I wonder what you were hearing God say to you in that. It's really simple, but very powerful. You might try godly play. You might try Forest Church techniques. You might use Mosaic Church, where we look at the same thing in many different learning styles, in many different ways. I like the term playground from the Intergenerational Conference recently, where just approach your whole session as one big playground. We're going to come together. We're going to explore a passage. We're going to do that in many different ways. We're going to have safe space for you to be able to really ask your questions about it and challenge each other on what you believe that passage is saying. And then, most importantly, we're going to be thinking about how do we now live this out, what we believe God is saying to us as a group. How do we live it out when we leave this place? all the time being open and aware to what God is doing in our group. Where is God speaking? What is God doing? Because I want to be on board with that rather than what I planned. Opportunities for them to take the lead. You know, they know what we're thinking about next week. How brilliant when a child turns up and says, I was looking this up and I found out this and I thought that was fascinating. Brilliant. Part of the group, all learning from each other. How do we encourage that learning after the session when the children go home? And I know that Pam's going to talk to us about the take-home sheets that really enable parents to keep the thinking going. I think at the end of the day, it's about don't give all the answers. Less teacher and more explorer together. 9 times out of 10, children have opened up the Bible and the Bible story to me in ways I've never seen it before. And vice versa, I would hope. Wondering questions we've talked about a lot if you've been here for the last 2 sessions, but I'm going to say it just in case because this is where it fits. The whole session is wondering together. You can start with a wondering question. You can finish with wondering questions that we discuss as a group. You can ask wondering questions that nobody's going to have time to explore today, but you'll go home munching it over for a good week. You might even continue to munch them over outside of the session. I wonder how available we can be to our children and our families outside of the church sessions. If they feel they want to get in touch with you, explore something, are there ways that we could enable that? That's something I'm wrestling with at the moment. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to move on. So loving, these are the things that I flagged up to you earlier, and I loved what Alice said about it's just about caring at the end of the day. It's not about romantic love, it's not necessarily about hugging, but it is about caring. And so perhaps this is what it could look like. So before the session, ongoing 2-way prayer. I know that some of the children in my group pray for me because they tell me. One boy saw me, I couldn't get up off the floor one week because my knee was dodgy, and he helped me up, bless him. And the next week he said, I've been praying for your knee this week, how's it been? Oh, how amazing. That is caring for each other. I wonder what we did during the pandemic to keep in touch with our families and our children that we could keep doing. So I wrote letters to my children in my group monthly, and I stopped when we started our groups again, and some of the children said, why aren't you writing to us anymore? And it really affected me actually, and so I'm going to write to them again once a month. It's a way of showing them that we care, not just within the session. Levi was really struggling when he found out in lockdown that someone suggested to him that Santa might not be real. And he struggled with this, and he had it out with his family, and then he said to his mum, I think I need to talk to Ruth about this. Now, that's not because I have any answers, it's simply that he knows I'm going to sit and listen, and we wrestled it together. We told the stories together of St. Nicholas, and he said to me, Ruth, why do adults spend so much effort and time, Levi is 9, why do they spend so much effort and time trying to persuade me that Santa exists, but they don't put the same effort in to show me that God exists? And I thought that was powerful. And it's written on my wall in my office as a reminder. That's what we're about. And they will know it by how we love them, with the love that Jesus gives us. Allow space for those conversations. Give yourself time in your sessions to just be with each other, eat together, play together, talk together. It's about the whole child. So, my time is gone. So my question is, this is what I was asking myself today, what are we already doing then? Learning, loving and listening. What is it we already do that we could really hone and do more of and free up space in our sessions to do more of? And perhaps what have we been doing over the last 18 months during our pandemic and lockdown that actually it's worth keeping as we move forwards. So like me with my letter writing, I'm going to keep that going as a way to show the children that I am available and I do care and I'm interested in the whole child, not just the child with the Bible story on a Sunday. I hope that's helped you in some ways, but let's keep talking together and learn from each other. Thank you.